The winter sun barely warmed the old brick building that housed Pine Grove Children's Home. Inside, Mrs. Lynn rushed around fixing everything she could before their important visitor arrived. She straightened picture frames, dusted shelves, and reminded the children to be on their best behavior. After 25 years as director, she knew this visit could change everything for them. "He's here," called one of the staff members from the front window. Mrs. Lynn smoothed her simple blue dress and took a deep breath. Richard Bennett's black luxury car pulled up to the curb, looking out of place in this struggling neighborhood. The man who stepped out wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Mrs. Lynn's salary. His silver-streaked hair was perfectly styled, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. As CEO of Bennett Enterprises, he controlled more money than Mrs. Lynn could imagine. Mrs. Lynn hurried to the entrance, practicing her welcoming smile. This wasn't just any wealthy businessman. His foundation had been considering a major donation that would save Pine Grove from closing its doors forever. After budget cuts and rising costs, they were barely keeping the lights on. "Mr. Bennett, welcome to Pine Grove. We're honored to have you visit," Mrs. Lynn said, extending her hand. "Thank you for having me," he replied with a practiced smile. His handshake was firm but brief. "I've heard good things about your work here." Mrs. Lynn led him through the main hallway. "We currently have 38 children ranging from ages 4 to 17. Many have been with us for years. We do what we can with limited resources." Mr. Bennett nodded, his eyes scanning everything: the worn carpet, the faded paint, the outdated furniture. But he also noticed the colorful artwork covering the walls, the neatly organized shelves of books, and the general cleanliness despite the building's age. "The children made all these," Mrs. Lynn said, gesturing to the artwork. "We believe in encouraging creativity, even when art supplies are hard to come by." As they continued the tour, Mrs. Lynn pointed out classrooms where volunteers helped with homework, the small library filled with donated books, and the kitchen where the cook managed to prepare nutritious meals on a tight budget. "How are your children doing academically?" Mr. Bennett asked, his deep voice echoing slightly in the hallway. "Surprisingly well, considering the circumstances. Last year, all 5 of our high school graduates received scholarships for further education. We're very proud of them." Mr. Bennett seemed impressed by this, making a note in his small leather notebook. Mrs. Lynn felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe he could see beyond the building's shortcomings to the real work happening inside. They passed a group of younger children who stared wide-eyed at the important visitor. One little boy waved enthusiastically, and to Mrs. Lynn's relief, Mr. Bennett waved back with a genuine smile. As they approached the east wing, piano music drifted through the hallway, simple, halting notes that suggested a beginner at practice. "What's down here?" Mr. Bennett asked, his attention caught by the music. "This is our recreation area," Mrs. Lynn explained. "We have a small gym, an art room, and the music room you're hearing now." The music stopped abruptly as they got closer. "Do many of your children play instruments?" Mr. Bennett asked. Mrs. Lynn sighed. "We wish we could offer more music education. We have that one old piano donated years ago and a few guitars. No budget for lessons, I'm afraid." They reached the doorway of the music room. Inside, a girl of about 12 quickly stood up from the piano bench, looking startled to see them. Her long black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and she wore jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. "Don't stop on our account," Mr. Bennett said kindly. The girl looked at Mrs. Lynn, who nodded encouragingly. "This is Lily," Mrs. Lynn introduced her. "Lily, Mr. Bennett is visiting from the Bennett Foundation." The girl gave a shy nod but didn't speak. "Were you practicing something?" Mr. Bennett asked, his voice softer than it had been during the tour. "Just trying to figure out a song I heard," Lily replied quietly, her fingers fidgeting with the edge of her sweater. Mr. Bennett walked over to the piano, an old upright model with yellowed keys and scuff marks along its wooden body. He ran his hand gently across its top. "My mother taught piano lessons," he said, surprising Mrs. Lynn with this personal detail. "Our house was always filled with music when I was growing up." Something in his expression changed, softening the businessman facade. He pressed one key, then another, the notes hanging in the air. "Do you play, Mr. Bennett?" Mrs. Lynn asked. "I did, many years ago." A distant look crossed his face. "I was quite good, actually. My mother insisted on daily practice. I hated it then, but now..." He trailed off, lost in some memory. Lily watched him curiously, her shyness temporarily forgotten. Mr. Bennett turned to her. How long have you been playing? Lily looked down at her worn sneakers. I don't really play. Not properly. I just try things out sometimes. Lily has a wonderful ear for music, Mrs. Lynn interjected. She taught herself what she knows by listening. The piano was donated years ago, but we've never had money for lessons. Mr. Bennett sat down on the bench and played a short, beautiful sequence of notes that filled the room with warmth. Both Mrs. Lynn and Lily stood transfixed. Chopin, he said with a small smile. My mother's favorite. He stood up and turned to Mrs. Lynn, businessman mode returning. Let's continue the tour. As they walked away, Lily returned to the piano, trying to copy what Mr. Bennett had played. The rest of the tour included the dormitory areas, showing the crowded but neat bedrooms where children slept 4 to a room, and the small outdoor playground with its aging equipment. Throughout, Mrs. Lynn pointed out both their challenges and their successes, hoping to convey how much they accomplished with so little. Finally, they returned to Mrs. Lynn's tiny office. Faded photographs of former residents covered one wall, children who had grown up and moved on, some now with families of their own. These are our success stories, Mrs. Lynn said proudly. Mr. Bennett studied the photos. You've helped many children over the years. We've tried, but I worry about our future. The building needs repairs we can't afford. Our operating costs increase every year while funding decreases. She hadn't planned to be so direct, but time was running out for Pine Grove. Mr. Bennett took a seat in the chair across from her desk. Tell me more about the girl at the piano. Lily, was it? The question surprised Mrs. Lynn. Lily? She came to us 3 years ago after losing her parents in a car accident. No relatives could take her. She's quiet, keeps to herself mostly, but she's very bright, especially with anything related to music or math. Has she been adopted? Mrs. Lynn shook her head. We've had a few inquiries, but nothing worked out. Older children are harder to place. Mr. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. That piano seems important to her. It's her safe place. Whenever she's upset or anxious, that's where you'll find her. I believe music helps her process her grief, though she's never had formal lessons. The sound of children laughing drifted in from outside. Mr. Bennett walked to the window and watched them playing. What would you do with our donation, if you received it? He asked, still looking outside. Mrs. Lynn had rehearsed this answer many times. First, essential repairs to the roof and heating system, then updating our educational materials, perhaps most importantly, expanding our counseling services. These children have experienced significant trauma. They need more support than we can currently provide. Mr. Bennett turned back to her. What about music programs? Art therapy? In an ideal world, absolutely. Creative outlets are incredibly healing, but we've had to prioritize the basics. Shelter, food, education. Mr. Bennett returned to the piano room, with Mrs. Lynn following curiously. Lily was still there, playing a simple melody over and over. You have a good ear, Mr. Bennett said, startling her again. Thank you, she whispered. If you had lessons, you could really develop your talent, he continued, sitting beside her on the bench. Music was my escape when I was young. My life was complicated. Lily looked up at him with new interest. Play something for me, he encouraged. Lily hesitated, then placed her fingers on the keys. She played a simple tune, something that sounded like a popular song but simplified. Her timing was inconsistent and she hit wrong notes occasionally, but the melody was recognizable. When she finished, Mr. Bennett nodded. Very good for someone without training. I can tell you understand how music works. Lily's face brightened at the praise. As they left the room, Mr. Bennett turned to Mrs. Lynn. You know, music changed my life. I might not be where I am today without it. They walked back toward the entrance, Mr. Bennett deep in thought. In the main hallway, children were returning from school, filling the space with energy and noise. It's chaotic, but it's home, Mrs. Lynn said with a fond smile. Mr. Bennett watched the children, his expression unreadable. Then unexpectedly he laughed, a genuine warm sound that made several children turn to look. If she plays the piano, I'll adopt her, he said, nodding toward the music room where Lily remained. Mrs. Lynn stared at him, unsure if he was serious. Mr. Bennett seemed to catch himself, quickly adding, That was just a joke, of course. My lifestyle hardly accommodates parenthood. I'm rarely even in one place for more than a week. But something in his expression made Mrs. Lynn wonder if there was more behind his words. Had the powerful CEO seen something of himself in that quiet girl? My assistant will contact you next week about the foundation's decision, Mr. Bennett said, professional mask back in place as they reached the door. Thank you for the tour. As his expensive car drove away, Mrs. Lynn stood watching, hope and worry battling inside her. Would his foundation help them? And what about his strange comment about Lily? Little did she know that his casual words, spoken half in jest, would set in motion events that would change lives forever. The moment Mr. Bennett's car disappeared around the corner, the quiet tension that had filled Pine Grove Children's Home burst like a bubble. Staff members surrounded Mrs. Lynn, eager for news. Well, how did it go? Asked Ms. Patel, the math teacher who volunteered 3 days a week. Did he seem impressed? Mrs. Lynn wasn't sure how to answer. He was interested. But you know these wealthy donors, they've seen dozens of places like ours. I couldn't read him. Did he say anything about the donation? Mr. Garcia, the maintenance man, wiped his hands on his work pants. He knew better than anyone how desperately they needed roof repairs before winter truly set in. He said his assistant would contact us next week, Mrs. Lynn replied. She didn't mention Mr. Bennett's odd comment about Lily and the piano. It had probably meant nothing, just a wealthy man's awkward attempt at humor. As the adults dispersed back to their duties, 12-year-old Tommy lingered in the hallway, having overheard everything. Tommy was Pine Grove's unofficial news reporter, always first to know everyone's business. He'd been watching from the stairwell when Mr. Bennett toured the building. Hey, did you see that rich guy's watch? Tommy whispered to his friend Zach as they headed toward the dining hall for afternoon snack. Bet it costs more than this whole building. Who cares about his watch? Zach replied. Did he say he'd give us money for a new game system? The one in the rec room barely works anymore. Tommy shrugged. Dunno about that. But I heard him say something weird when he was leaving. Something about adopting someone who plays piano. At a nearby table, Rose and Daisy, twin 7-year-olds, perked up their ears. Adopting? Who's getting adopted? Rose asked, her eyes wide. Tommy enjoyed having an audience. The rich guy, Mr. Bennett or whatever, he said something like, if she plays the piano, I'll adopt her. Who was he talking about? Daisy demanded. Tommy lowered his voice dramatically. Must have been Lily. She's the only one who plays that old piano all the time. The news spread through Pine Grove faster than head lice. By dinner time, every child knew that the super-rich man who had visited was looking to adopt, and somehow it involved the piano and Lily. Lily herself was one of the last to hear. She'd spent the afternoon in the library corner finishing her science homework, unaware of the growing rumor. It wasn't until she entered the dining hall that she noticed the strange looks and sudden silences when she walked by. Why's everyone acting weird? She asked June, a quiet 14-year-old who was one of her few friends. June hesitated. You haven't heard? Everyone's talking about how that rich businessman wants to adopt you if you can play the piano well enough. Lily nearly dropped her tray. What? That's crazy. He doesn't even know me. Tommy said he heard him tell Mrs. Lynn directly. June replied with a shrug. Something about if you play piano, he'll adopt you. That's ridiculous, Lily mumbled, her face heating up as she noticed more kids staring at her. She quickly found a seat in the corner, hoping to disappear, but the thought wouldn't leave her. A home of her own? After 3 years at Pine Grove, Lily had started to believe she'd never be adopted. She was too old, too quiet, too ordinary. The younger kids, the cute ones, the outgoing ones, they were the ones who found families. That night, Lily lay awake long after her roommates fell asleep. Mr. Bennett had seemed nice enough when he'd listened to her play. He'd even shared that story about his mother teaching piano. And he was rich, which Lily didn't care about for itself, but it meant he probably had a nice house. Maybe even a better piano. Was it really possible? Or just another disappointment waiting to happen? Around midnight, Lily slipped out of bed. The floorboards creaked beneath her sock-covered feet as she crept down the hallway. Pine Grove was different at night, shadowy and silent except for the occasional snore or cough from behind closed doors. The music room door was never locked. Nobody would steal an ancient piano that was perpetually out of tune. Lily slid onto the bench in the darkness, the only light coming from a street lamp outside the window. She placed her fingers on the keys without pressing them, imagining the notes. Mr. Bennett had played something beautiful. Chopin, he'd said. Lily had no idea who Chopin was, but the music had made her feel something. She'd been trying to copy those notes all afternoon, but they never sounded right under her fingers. If playing well meant having a home, Lily began to play softly, picking out the simple tune she knew best. It was the lullaby her mother used to sing, before the accident that took both her parents. Lily had figured it out by ear during her first months at Pine Grove, when crying herself to sleep became too exhausting. The piano became her comfort, her connection to before. "You should be in bed." Lily jumped at the voice, her hands jerking away from the keys. Mrs. Lynn stood in the doorway, her normally tidy hair loose around her shoulders. "I'm sorry," Lily whispered. "I couldn't sleep." Instead of scolding her, Mrs. Lynn came and sat beside her on the bench. "That was pretty. What were you playing?" "Just something my mom used to sing," Lily replied, looking down at the keys. "Mrs. Lynn, is it true what everyone's saying?" "About Mr. Bennett?" Mrs. Lynn sighed deeply. "I was afraid this would happen. Pine Grove's rumor mill is faster than the internet." "So it's not true?" Lily's heart sank even though she'd told herself not to hope. Mr. Bennett did say something about adoption and piano playing, but Lily... Mrs. Lynn placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It wasn't a serious offer. Rich people sometimes say things without thinking how others might take them. It was just a passing comment." Lily nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "Of course it wasn't real. But he did seem impressed by your natural talent," Mrs. Lynn added, "and his foundation might help us get some proper music education here." They sat in silence for a moment, the old piano creaking slightly as Lily leaned against it. "I should go to bed," Lily finally said, standing up. "That's probably best." Mrs. Lynn walked her back toward the dormitories. "Try not to think too much about Mr. Bennett. These donation visits rarely lead to anything personal." But as she crawled back into bed, Lily couldn't stop thinking about it. What if Mrs. Lynn was wrong? What if Mr. Bennett had meant it? Adults often didn't say exactly what they meant. Lily had learned that lesson well over the years. The next morning at breakfast, Tommy slid onto the bench across from Lily, his face eager. "So are you going to do it? Learn to play piano super good so the rich guy adopts you?" "Leave her alone, Tommy," June said from the next table. "I'm just asking." Tommy protested. "If I could play piano and get adopted by a billionaire, I'd practice all day." "He's not a billionaire," Lily muttered, pushing her cereal around with her spoon. "But he is super rich," Tommy insisted. "My brother works at a car wash, and he said Mr. Bennett's car costs more than he'll make in 10 years. More children gathered around, all curious about Lily's potential golden ticket out of Pine Grove. "Will you take music lessons?" asked one of the younger girls. "We don't have money for lessons," Lily reminded her. "But Mrs. Lynn said we might get some programs if the rich guy gives us money," another child chimed in. "Yeah, and then you can learn real piano and he'll come back and adopt you," Tommy concluded triumphantly. The attention was overwhelming. Lily mumbled something about needing to finish homework and fled the dining hall, her breakfast barely touched. Throughout the day, the story continued to grow. By afternoon, some kids were saying Mr. Bennett had promised to adopt anyone who could play Beethoven perfectly. Others claimed he was secretly Lily's long-lost uncle, searching for his niece through her musical talent. Lily escaped to the library again, hiding between the stacks with a book she wasn't really reading. She heard footsteps and peered around the shelf to see Mrs. Lynn talking with Ms. Patel. "I'm worried about Lily," Mrs. Lynn was saying quietly. "This rumor about Mr. Bennett is getting out of hand." "Children always latch on to hope," Ms. Patel replied. "Especially here. But that's just it, it's false hope. You should see how she was practicing at midnight. The poor girl actually believes if she plays well enough, she'll find a home." Lily pulled back, her chest tight. So Mrs. Lynn really did think it was impossible. That evening after dinner, Lily returned to the music room. She stared at the piano, its chipped keys and scuffed wood suddenly seeming like her most important possession. What if, just what if, she could play something truly beautiful, something that would make Mr. Bennett remember his own childhood, his mother, the importance of Maisie, something that might make him want to share that with a child who understood? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. June stood there holding some papers. "I asked my cousin to send these," June said, placing the sheets on the piano. She takes piano lessons. These are some beginner songs with the notes marked. I thought it might help. Lily stared at the papers, real sheet music with strange symbols she didn't understand. But I don't know how to read music. Jun pointed to some letters written above the notes. These tell you which keys to play. C, D, E, and so on. My cousin says you just follow along, matching the letters to the keys. It wasn't much, but it was more guidance than Lily had ever had. Thanks, Jun. After Jun left, Lily studied the pages carefully. Then she placed her fingers on the keys and began to play, following the letters one by one. The result was halting and uneven, but recognizably a song. For the first time, Lily felt like she wasn't just making noise. She was actually playing music. Even if Mr. Bennett never came back, even if it was all just a silly rumor, learning to play felt important somehow. That night, Lily dreamed of a house with big windows and a grand piano in the center of the living room. In the dream, she played beautifully while someone listened with pride. She couldn't see the listener's face, but somehow it didn't matter. What mattered was the music. 3 days passed without any word from Mr. Bennett or his foundation. Mrs. Lynn checked her email constantly, jumping whenever the phone rang. The roof had begun to leak in 2 more places, and the ancient heating system made concerning noises whenever it kicked on. They needed that donation desperately. Meanwhile, Lily had barely left the music room. The simple sheet music Jun had given her was now covered in pencil marks and notes. She'd figured out that each letter matched a specific key on the piano, and slowly she was learning to follow the patterns. On Wednesday afternoon, a small commotion at the front entrance caught everyone's attention. A young woman in a crisp business suit arrived carrying a large cardboard box. "I'm looking for Mrs. Lynn," she announced to the wide-eyed children who gathered in the hallway. "I'm Vivian Wong, Mr. Bennett's assistant." Mrs. Lynn emerged from her office, trying not to look too eager. "Ms. Wong, welcome to Pine Grove. We weren't expecting you." "Mr. Bennett asked me to drop these off personally," Ms. Wong explained, setting down the box. "He thought they might be useful while the foundation finalizes its decision." The children crowded closer as Mrs. Lynn opened the box. Inside were music books, dozens of them, from beginner level to advanced. Beneath those were folders of sheet music and several theory workbooks. "This is very generous," Mrs. Lynn said, genuinely touched by the gesture. "Please thank Mr. Bennett for us." Ms. Wong nodded, then lowered her voice slightly. "Mr. Bennett also asked about a particular student, a girl who was playing piano during his visit?" "Lily?" Mrs. Lynn confirmed, her heart racing slightly. Perhaps the rumors weren't completely unfounded after all. Mr. Bennett wondered if she might benefit from these materials, Ms. Wong said, gesturing to the box. He was quite impressed by her natural ability. Before Mrs. Lynn could respond, Tommy pushed forward. "Is Mr. Bennett coming back to hear Lily play? Is he really going to adopt her if she plays good enough?" Ms. Wong looked startled. "I don't believe Mr. Bennett mentioned adoption." "Tommy, that's enough," Mrs. Lynn said firmly. "Ms. Wong, would you like some coffee before you go? We can speak in my office." Once the door was closed behind them, Mrs. Lynn explained the situation. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding among the children. Mr. Bennett made a casual remark about piano playing and adoption, and it spread like wildfire." Ms. Wong looked uncomfortable. "I see. Well, Mr. Bennett certainly didn't mention anything about adoption to me. He's never expressed interest in becoming a parent. His schedule wouldn't allow it. He's rarely in one place for more than a few days." "That's what I assumed," Mrs. Lynn said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Could you clarify something for me, though? The Foundation's decision about our funding request, is it looking favorable?" Ms. Wong's professional smile returned. "The committee is still reviewing all applications. I can tell you that Pine Grove is being seriously considered, but no final decisions have been made." After Ms. Wong left, Mrs. Lynn sat at her desk for a long moment. Then she picked up the box of music books and headed to the music room. Lily was there, as expected, plinking out notes on the old piano. She looked up when Mrs. Lynn entered, her eyes immediately going to the box. "What's that?" "A delivery from Mr. Bennett," Mrs. Lynn said, setting the box on a table. "Music books and sheet music. He thought you might find them useful." Lily's eyes widened. "For me, really?" Mrs. Lynn hesitated, not wanting to encourage false hopes. "For all the children who are interested in music?" "But yes, his assistant said he was impressed by your natural ability." Lily rushed over to examine the books, her fingers gently touching the colorful covers. These are real piano lesson books. Lily, Mrs. Lynn said carefully, I need to talk to you about something important. These rumors going around about Mr. Bennett adopting someone, I know they're probably not true, Lily interrupted, not looking up from the books. But he did send these, right? That means he remembers me at least. Mrs. Lynn sighed. How could she crush the girl's spirits when this was the most animated she'd seen Lily in months? Yes, he remembers you. His assistant specifically mentioned you. Lily pulled out a book titled Piano Basics for Beginners and opened it reverently. I'm going to learn properly, even if nothing else happens. That evening during dinner, Lily couldn't stop thinking about the music books. She'd already started working through the first few pages, learning where middle C was and how to position her hands correctly. It was like discovering a new language, one that made perfect sense to her. Hey, piano girl, Tommy called from across the dining hall. I heard the rich guy's assistant came today. Did she say anything about him adopting you? Lily felt her face flush as heads turned toward her. No, it was just about some music books he donated. Tommy looked disappointed. So the whole adoption thing was fake? Nobody said it was definitely happening, Lily mumbled, pushing food around her plate. Jun came to her rescue. Leave her alone, Tommy. Mr. Bennett's foundation might still help the whole home. Which is way more important than your gossip. Later, as Lily was heading back to the music room with one of the new books, Mrs. Lynn stopped her in the hallway. Lily, I've been thinking, these books are wonderful, but learning an instrument really requires a teacher. I can figure it out, Lily insisted. The book explains everything step by step. I'm sure you can, Mrs. Lynn agreed. But I made a few calls today. Do you remember Mr. Chen, who volunteers at the community center? His daughter Amber is a music student at the university. She's agreed to give you some basic piano lessons twice a week after school. Lily could hardly believe it. Real lessons? With a real teacher? Real lessons, Mrs. Lynn confirmed with a smile. She can start tomorrow. But how can we afford it? Amber is doing this as part of her community service hours for school. It won't cost us anything. Lily threw her arms around Mrs. Lynn in a rare display of emotion. Thank you. The next afternoon, Amber Chen arrived at Pine Grove carrying a canvas bag full of music materials. She was in her early 20s with short hair dyed purple at the tips and a friendly smile. So you're Lily, she said, setting her bag down next to the piano. Mom told me you're teaching yourself to play. Lily nodded shyly, intimidated by this cool college student who probably played perfectly. Let's hear what you've got so far, Amber suggested, gesturing toward the piano. Reluctantly, Lily sat down and played the simple exercise she'd been practicing from the new book. Her fingers fumbled a few times and she winced at the wrong notes, but Amber nodded approvingly when she finished. That's really good for someone who's only had a book to work with. You've got a good ear, really? Definitely. Your hand position needs some work, and we'll need to talk about rhythm, but you've got natural musicality. That's the hard part to teach. For the next hour, Amber showed Lily how to sit properly at the piano, how to curve her fingers over the keys, and how to count beats in her head. By the end of the lesson, Lily's brain felt full but excited. Practice these exercises every day, Amber instructed, marking several pages in the book. And try this piece too. It's simple but pretty. The piece was called Moonlight, and the sheet music looked more complicated than anything Lily had tried before. But Amber played it once, and the melody was so beautiful that Lily was determined to master it. Mrs. Lynn mentioned someone important might be coming to hear you play, Amber said casually, as she packed up her things. Is that true? Lily hesitated. Maybe. There's this businessman who visited Mr. Bennett. He plays piano too. His mom taught him when he was little. Well, if he does come back, what would you want to play for him? Lily thought about it. Something beautiful. Something that shows I really care about music, not just pressing keys. Amber smiled. That's the right answer. We'll find the perfect piece. Over the next 2 weeks, Lily practiced more intensely than she'd ever done anything in her life. She woke up early to practice before breakfast, used every free period during school, and stayed in the music room until Mrs. Lynn gently forced her to go to bed. Fingers developed calluses, and sometimes she dreamed of piano keys. Amber came twice a week as promised and was impressed with Lily's progress. You're moving faster than most of my beginning students, she said during their 4th lesson. You really love this, don't you? Lily nodded. She did love it more than she'd expected to. Even if Mr. Bennett never returned, even if the adoption rumors were completely false, she had found something that felt like hers alone. But the rumors persisted. Some kids lost interest, but others still asked Lily daily if she'd heard anything from the rich piano guy. Tommy even started taking bets on whether Mr. Bennett would return before Christmas. 3 weeks after his visit, Mrs. Lynn received the call everyone had been waiting for. Mr. Bennett would like to visit Pine Grove again next Friday, Ms. Wong informed her. The foundation is in the final stages of decision-making, and he'd like to discuss some potential conditions for the grant in person. Mrs. Lynn's heart leaped. Of course. We'd be delighted to have him. He also mentioned, Ms. Wong paused, sounding slightly puzzled, that he'd like to hear how the music program is developing. Specifically, he asked about the girl who plays piano. After hanging up, Mrs. Lynn sat motionless for several minutes. Then she hurried to the music room where Lily was working through her exercises with Amber. Lily, she interrupted, slightly out of breath. Mr. Bennett is coming back next Friday. His assistant said he wants to hear you play. The pencil Lily had been using to mark her music clattered to the floor. Really? He's actually coming to hear me? Amber looked between them, sensing the weight of the moment. Then we'd better get you ready for a performance. That night, Lily lay awake long after lights out, her mind racing with possibilities. Mr. Bennett was coming back specifically to hear her play. Maybe, just maybe, the offhand comment that had sparked all the rumors hadn't been so meaningless after all. The week before Mr. Bennett's return visit felt like the longest in Lily's life. Every day crawled by as she divided her time between regular schoolwork and intense piano practice. Her fingers ached, and twice she fell asleep at the piano, waking up with key marks pressed into her cheek. Amber came every day that week instead of just twice, pushing Lily harder than before. Again, Amber would say whenever Lily fumbled a passage of Moonlight, the piece they'd chosen for her performance. But this time, feel the music. Don't just play the notes. By Wednesday, Lily could play the piece from memory, though it still didn't sound as beautiful as when Amber played it. Something was missing. You're thinking too much about getting it right, Amber told her. Music isn't just about correct notes. It's about emotion. What does this piece make you feel? Lily thought about it. Sad, kind of, but peaceful too. Then play it that way. Close your eyes and imagine something peaceful but a little sad. Lily closed her eyes and thought about her parents. Not the accident that took them, but quiet evenings at home when her mother would sing while her father read the newspaper. She remembered the feeling of safety, of belonging. Her fingers moved across the keys, and this time the music sounded different, alive somehow, with feeling behind each note. Amber smiled. That's it. That's what Mr. Bennett needs to hear. Friday morning brought chaos to Pine Grove. Mrs. Lynn had the entire building cleaned top to bottom. Mr. Garcia fixed everything he possibly could. The children were instructed to wear their nicest clothes and be on their best behavior. Remember, Mrs. Lynn told everyone at breakfast, this visit is about the future of Pine Grove. The foundation's donation could fix our roof, update our heating system, and maybe even start some new programs. So please, she looked directly at Tommy, no wild stories or inappropriate questions. Tommy feigned innocence. I don't know what you're talking about, Mrs. Lynn. You know exactly what I mean. No more adoption rumors, understand? In her room, Lily stood before the small mirror, trying to make herself presentable. She'd washed her hair the night before, and June had helped her braid it neatly. Her nicest outfit, a blue sweater and dark jeans without any holes, was laid out on her bed. You'll do great, June assured her, watching from the doorway. You've practiced so hard. Lily's stomach felt like it was full of butterflies. What if I mess up? What if I forget the notes? Then you'll keep going. Amber said that's what real musicians do, right? They don't stop just because they make a mistake. Downstairs, the staff had transformed the dining hall into a makeshift auditorium. The old piano had been moved from the music room, freshly polished though still badly in need of tuning. Chairs were arranged in rows, and someone had even found a tablecloth to drape over a side table where refreshments would be served. At 10 minutes to 2, Lily peeked through the window and saw Mr. Bennett's black car pull up outside. He stepped out looking exactly as she remembered. Expensive suit, perfect hair, confident stride. But this time he wasn't alone. An older woman emerged from the passenger side, elegant in a burgundy coat with silver hair swept into a stylish updo. "Who's that with him?" Lily whispered to Jun, who was peeking over her shoulder. "Maybe his wife?" Jun suggested. "Or his mother?" "Didn't you say his mother taught him piano?" Lily's heart beat faster. Had he brought his mother to hear her play? The pressure suddenly felt 10 times heavier. Mrs. Lynn greeted the visitors at the door. "Mr. Bennett, welcome back to Pine Grove. And Mrs. Bennett, it's an honor to meet you." The silver-haired woman smiled warmly. "Please call me Dorothy. And Richard has told me so much about your wonderful work here." Richard, so that was Mr. Bennett's first name. Somehow knowing it made him seem more like a real person and less like an intimidating rich businessman. Mrs. Lynn led them toward the dining hall, talking about the foundation's potential impact on Pine Grove. As they approached, Lily ducked away from the window. "I can't do this," she whispered to Jun. "What if they hate it? What if they laugh?" "They won't," Jun said firmly. "And even if they did, who cares? You're playing for yourself, not just for them." Lily took a deep breath and nodded. Jun was right. She loved the music. That was what mattered most. The dining hall filled quickly with children and staff. Mr. Bennett and his mother were given seats in the front row. Lily peeked from behind the kitchen door, watching as Mrs. Lynn stepped to the center of the room. "Before we discuss the foundation's decision, we'd like to show you something special," Mrs. Lynn announced. "As you know, Mr. Bennett, your generous donation of music books has already made a difference here. One of our residents has been working very hard with a volunteer teacher, and she'd like to play for you today." Mrs. Lynn gestured toward the kitchen door. "Lily, are you ready?" On wobbly legs, Lily walked to the piano. She could feel everyone watching her, the children, the staff, and especially Mr. Bennett and his mother. She sat down on the bench, wiped her sweaty palms on her jeans, and placed her fingers on the keys. For a terrible moment, her mind went completely blank. What was she supposed to play? Then she saw Amber at the back of the room, giving her an encouraging nod, and it all came back. Lily began to play Moonlight. The first few notes were hesitant, and she winced at how out of tune the piano sounded. But she kept going, remembering what Amber had told her about feeling the music. She closed her eyes briefly, thinking again of those peaceful evenings with her parents. The melody flowed more smoothly, and for a few moments she forgot about the audience, lost in the gentle rise and fall of the music. Then her fingers slipped, hitting a jarring wrong note. Her rhythm faltered as panic set in. She glanced up and accidentally caught Mr. Bennett's eye. His expression was unreadable. Lily's hands froze over the keys. The silence felt deafening. Then from the front row, Dorothy Bennett spoke softly. "Keep going, dear. Every pianist makes mistakes." Encouraged, Lily found her place and continued, though her confidence was shaken. She hit more wrong notes, and the beautiful flow she'd achieved during practice was gone. By the time she reached the final chords, her eyes were burning with unshed tears of disappointment. When she finished, there was polite applause. Lily stared down at the keys, unable to look at anyone. "Thank you, Lily," Mrs. Lynn said, returning to the center of the room. "As you can see, Mr. Bennett, we're trying to nurture the talents of our children even with limited resources." Mr. Bennett stood up. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward the piano. Lily quickly scooted over as he sat down beside her on the bench. Up close, she could smell his expensive cologne and see a tiny nick on his jaw where he'd cut himself shaving. "That was Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, wasn't it?" he asked quietly. A simplified version, but definitely Beethoven. Lily nodded, still looking down. "It's a difficult piece, even in a simplified form," he continued. "How long have you been practicing it?" 2 weeks, Lily whispered. Mr. Bennett looked surprised. 2 weeks? That's impressive for a beginner. Before Lily could respond, he placed his hands on the keys and began to play. The same melody emerged, but richer, more complex, with chords and runs that Lily's version had lacked. Even on the out-of-tune piano, it sounded magical. The room fell silent as everyone listened. Mr. Bennett played with his eyes closed, his expression peaceful. When he finished, no one spoke for several seconds. "I haven't played that in years," he said, more to himself than to Lily. Then he turned to face the room. "This piano is terribly out of tune." "Yes," Mrs. Lynn acknowledged. "Unfortunately, piano tuning isn't in our budget." Mr. Bennett nodded thoughtfully. "Well, perhaps we can address that." He stood up and walked back to his seat, leaving Lily alone at the piano. Mrs. Lynn quickly took control again. Let's move on to discussing the foundation's decision. As Lily slipped back to sit with the other children, she felt hollow with disappointment. Her performance had been a disaster. She'd practiced so hard, but when it mattered most, she'd failed. Whatever slim chance might have existed for Mr. Bennet to consider his casual comment about adoption was surely gone now. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. Mr. Bennet spoke about the foundation's grant, using words like allocation and endowment that Lily didn't fully understand. Dorothy Bennet asked questions about the children's education and health care. Staff members discussed their most urgent needs. Lily sat with her eyes down, barely listening. She just wanted the day to be over so she could hide in her room and cry. Finally, Mrs. Lynn stood up. We're so grateful for the Foundation's generosity. This grant will truly transform Pine Grove. People began to move around, talking in excited groups. The meeting was over. Lily started to slip away toward the door when she heard someone call her name. Dorothy Bennet was walking toward her, elegant and intimidating. Lily froze, not knowing what to expect. Lily, isn't it? Dorothy said with a kind smile. I wanted to tell you how much I enjoyed your playing. But I made so many mistakes, Lily blurted out. Of course you did. Everyone does when they're learning, Dorothy replied matter-of-factly. What matters is that you kept going. And there were moments, brief ones but real, where the music truly came through. That can't be taught, you know? It comes from within. Lily didn't know what to say. Thank you seemed inadequate. How did you become interested in piano? Dorothy asked. I just liked how it sounded. Lily explained awkwardly. After my parents died, it made me feel better somehow. Dorothy's expression softened. Music has that power. It was the same for Richard, my son. After his father passed away, the piano became his refuge. Lily glanced across the room where Mr. Bennet was deep in conversation with Mrs. Lynn. He plays really beautifully. He does, Dorothy agreed. Though he doesn't play nearly as often as he should these days. Too busy with business, he says. There was a hint of disapproval in her voice. Perhaps seeing your enthusiasm will remind him of what's truly important in life. With that cryptic comment, Dorothy patted Lily's arm and walked away, leaving the girl wondering what exactly she had meant. The weekend after Mr. Bennet's visit was quiet at Pine Grove. Children whispered about the Foundation's grant. Staff members made lists of repairs and improvements, and Lily avoided the piano room entirely. Every time she thought about her performance, her stomach twisted with embarrassment. Monday morning, Mrs. Lynn found Lily hiding in the library corner during her usual practice time. Aren't you supposed to be having a lesson with Amber today? Mrs. Lynn asked, sitting down beside her. Lily shrugged, not looking up from her book. I told her not to come anymore. Why would you do that? Because I'm terrible at piano, Lily mumbled. Everyone heard how bad I was. I just want to forget the whole thing. Mrs. Lynn was quiet for a moment. You know, when I was about your age, I entered a poetry contest at school. I worked so hard on my poem, practicing how I would recite it, imagining winning the prize. Despite herself, Lily was curious. What happened? When I got up on stage, I forgot every word. Just stood there, frozen, until a teacher had to help me back to my seat. I was so humiliated that I didn't write another poem for years. That's how I feel about the piano now, Lily admitted. And that's exactly why you need to go back to it, Mrs. Lynn said gently. I missed out on something I loved because I let one bad moment define me. Don't make the same mistake. Lily picked at a loose thread on her sleeve. But Mr. Bennet must think I'm a joke. After all that practice, I couldn't even play one simple piece right. Actually, Mrs. Lynn said, Mr. Bennet asked about you before he left. Lily's head snapped up. He did? What did he say? He wanted to know how long you'd been playing, whether you enjoyed it and if you had regular lessons. What did you tell him? The truth. That you'd only recently started formal lessons, that you practice harder than anyone I've ever seen, and that you truly love music. Mrs. Lynn smiled. His mother seemed quite impressed with you as well. Lily remembered Dorothy Bennet's kind words about the music coming from within. Maybe her performance hadn't been a complete disaster after all. Amber will be here at 4, Mrs. Lynn said, standing up. I hope you'll reconsider your decision. At 10 minutes to 4, Lily was waiting in the music room when Amber arrived. I thought you might not show up, Amber said, setting down her bag. I almost didn't, Lily admitted. I feel so stupid about Friday. Amber sat down beside her on the piano bench. Want to know a secret? When I had my first recital at college, I played the wrong piece. I prepared 2 songs and got confused about which one I was supposed to play first. Halfway through, I realized my mistake and just stopped in front of the entire music department. What did you do? Cried in the bathroom for an hour, then went back and asked my professor if I could try again the next day. Amber smiled at the memory. And I did much better the second time. I wish I could have a second chance with Mr. Bennett, Lily said softly. Maybe you will someday. But for now, let's focus on playing for yourself, not for anyone else. They spent the hour working on a new piece, something simpler than Moonlight, but still beautiful. Lily's fingers felt stiff at first, but gradually the joy of making music returned. By the end of the lesson, she'd almost forgotten her embarrassment. Same time Wednesday? Amber asked as she packed up. Lily nodded, already looking forward to it. The next morning, Pine Grove was buzzing with excitement. A large truck had arrived, and men in uniforms were unloading supplies for the roof repairs. Mrs. Lynn moved through the halls with a clipboard, checking things off a list and smiling more than she had in months. The first installment of the grant came through yesterday, she explained to the curious children who followed her around. We're starting with the most urgent repairs, roof, heating system, and some basic safety updates. Is that all the money is for? Tommy asked, clearly disappointed. Just boring stuff? Mrs. Lynn laughed. Not at all. There's funding for educational programs, counseling services, and yes, even some fun stuff, as you'd call it. But we have to fix the essential things first. As the weeks passed, Pine Grove transformed. The leaky roof was replaced, the heating system worked properly for the first time in years, and the bathrooms were updated. Fresh paint brightened the hallways, new books filled the library shelves, and even the playground got some much-needed repairs. Through it all, Lily continued her piano lessons. She practiced every day, gradually improving, no longer driven by the fantasy of adoption but by her genuine love for music. Sometimes she even played for the younger children, who watched her with wide-eyed admiration. A month after the Bennett Foundation's grant, Mrs. Lynn received another unexpected call. Ms. Wong, how nice to hear from you, she said, recognizing Mr. Bennett's assistant on the phone. She listened for a moment, her expression changing from surprise to confusion to cautious excitement. That evening, she found Lily in the music room working on a new piece Amber had taught her. Lily, I need to talk to you about something important, Mrs. Lynn began, sitting down beside the piano. Mr. Bennett has made an unusual request. He'd like you to come to his company's holiday concert next week. Apparently, his mother is quite insistent about it. Lily's hands froze over the keys. Me? Why? It seems Mrs. Bennett was genuinely impressed by your playing and your determination. The concert features young musicians from around the city, and they've saved a spot for you. But I'm not good enough for a real concert, Lily protested. That's not for you to decide, Mrs. Lynn replied firmly. Mrs. Bennett specifically requested you, and Mr. Bennett has arranged everything, including transportation. All you need to do is prepare a short piece to play. Lily's mind raced. A real concert with an audience of strangers, including the Bennetts. The thought was terrifying, but also thrilling. I'll need to practice a lot more, she said finally. Mrs. Lynn smiled. I thought you might say that. The next week was a blur of preparations. Amber helped Lily select and perfect a piece that suited her current skill level. Mrs. Lynn took her shopping for a proper concert outfit, a simple but elegant blue dress, and her first pair of dress shoes. June and the other children made encouraging signs for her to see before she left. On the night of the concert, a car with a driver arrived at Pine Grove. Lily, barely recognizing herself in the new dress and with her hair styled by one of the staff members, was a bundle of nerves. Remember, Mrs. Lynn said as she walked Lily to the car, this is an opportunity, not a test. Just enjoy the experience. The concert was held in the grand ballroom of a downtown hotel where the Bennett Foundation was hosting its annual holiday gala. When Lily arrived backstage, she was overwhelmed by the sight of other young musicians with their expensive instruments and confident attitudes. Most appeared to be from wealthy families with parents fussing over them and private instructors giving last-minute advice. You must be Lily, a stagehand said, checking her name off a list. You're playing seventh in the program. You can wait here until they call you. Lily sat alone on a folding chair, her hands cold with nerves. She closed her eyes and tried to remember everything Amber had taught her about staying calm before a performance. There you are. Lily's eyes snapped open. Dorothy Bennett was walking toward her, elegant in a deep green evening gown. Mrs. Bennett, I didn't know you'd be back here. I wanted to wish you luck, though I'm sure you don't need it. Dorothy sat down beside her. How are you feeling? Scared, Lily admitted. Everyone else seems so professional. Dorothy waved a dismissive hand. Most of them have been taking lessons since they could walk. Their parents spend thousands on private instructors and competitions. You've accomplished more in a few months than many of them have with all those advantages. Before Lily could respond, the stagehand returned. Miss Lily? You're up next, Dorothy squeezed her hand. Remember what I told you, the music comes from within. Just play from your heart. Moments later, Lily found herself walking onto the stage, the spotlight nearly blinding her. The grand piano before her was bigger and more beautiful than any she'd ever seen. The audience was a dark blur beyond the stage lights. She sat down, adjusted the bench, and placed her hands on the keys. For a terrifying moment, she wondered if she'd forget everything. Then she took a deep breath, remembered Amber's teachings, and began to play. The piece was a simple but lovely melody called Winter Dreams that Amber had arranged especially for her skill level. As she played, Lily forgot about the audience, the Bennetts, and even her own nervous thoughts. There was only the music, pure and true and coming from somewhere deep inside her. When she finished, there was a moment of silence, then warm applause. Lily stood and gave a small bow before hurrying off stage, her heart pounding with a mixture of relief and exhilaration. That was beautiful, Dorothy said, waiting in the wings. Truly beautiful. Come with me. Richard wants to see you. She led Lily through a side door and into a small reception room where Mr. Bennett was waiting. He looked different somehow, less intimidating in evening clothes, with a genuine smile on his face. Well done, Lily, he said. You've made remarkable progress. Thank you, sir, Lily replied, still buzzing from the performance. And thank you for inviting me tonight. That was Mother's idea, he admitted with a glance at Dorothy. But I'm glad you came. There's something I'd like to discuss with you. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Was this it? The moment when the wild rumors would somehow impossibly come true. As you know, the foundation has been supporting Pine Grove, Mr. Bennett began. But we'd like to do something more specific for you and other musically inclined children there. Not adoption, then. Lily tried not to show her disappointment. We're establishing a music scholarship program, he continued. Lessons, instruments, summer camps, even college funds for those who want to pursue music seriously. You would be our first recipient, Lily blinked in surprise. A real scholarship for me? Dorothy stepped forward. My son may have spoken carelessly that day at Pine Grove, but his comment made me realize something important. Music changed his life, as it changed mine. It can change yours too, and not just yours. We can't adopt you, Lily, Mr. Bennett said gently. My life isn't suited for parenthood, and you deserve better than a guardian who's rarely home. But we can give you this opportunity if you want it. Lily thought about everything that had happened since Mr. Bennett's first visit, the books, the lessons with Amber, the discovery of her own passion for music. It wasn't the family she'd secretly hoped for, but it was a different kind of gift, a future. I want it, she said firmly. And maybe, could other kids at Pine Grove get scholarships too? Some of them have started learning from the books you sent. Mr. Bennett smiled. That's exactly what we had in mind. A full program for anyone who's interested. Later that night, as the car drove her back to Pine Grove, Lily watched the city lights blur past the window. She hadn't gotten the fairy tale ending that Tommy and the others had gossiped about. There would be no adoption, no new family, no fancy house with a grand piano in the living room. But she had found something she loved. Something that was hers alone, that no one could take away, and maybe someday it would lead her to places she couldn't even imagine yet. As Pine Grove came into view, with its newly repaired roof and freshly painted trim, Lily smiled to herself. It wasn't a perfect ending, but it was a beginning, and that was even better.